Welcome, bienvenue, welcome to another property live stream. This is called IPSA Kind of Magic, and it celebrates all things personal search agent related, particularly all to do with the Association of Independent Personal Search Agents, which is currently chaired by Hamish McClay, who joins me today. Our special guest is a friend of the show and inveterate dance partner of mine, Mahesh Karai. Welcome, Mahesh. Well, I have to say we had a wonderful get together on Monday with the IPSA Massive, and we had a lovely time. And I was very pleased to say that I was part of providing some of the entertainment, and I got to see some of my friends at IPSA again, including Mahesh, and it was a great time was had by all. Now, putting that to one side, today's topic is fewer conveyancers, longer waits. And of course, as is traditional, Hamish McClay.
Well, good afternoon to you all, and welcome to all you IPSA souls out there, or IPSA souls. No, fantastic it was on Monday. And I want to a certain extent, extend part of the conversation. Now, the interesting thing on Monday, we had actually 4 property lawyers present during the course of the day. Now, the interesting thing about those property lawyers, one sort of does a heck of a lot more than just property. Juliet, who was speaking, she actually focuses and she works mostly with lenders within the property conveyancing. Jess works for Martello, the environmental people, and her name eludes me. She works for another of the search companies. So when you actually look at that, there wasn't a single one of them out of those 4 very, very capable property lawyers actually that worked just in conveyancing. There really was only the one, and that was sort of John. It was a fascinating presentation, that actually, because he's working with AI. And of course, that takes a lot of getting hold of. But this is we are put through a challenging situation, because in a way, we do have conveyances. But what became more evident as we were speaking through the day, and you really need to get to those IPSA members if you can, is actually the responsibility now that's being laid upon property lawyers and what they are going to be responsible for. Because 9 times out of 10, if something goes wrong, they're the very, very first people that everybody tries to sort of blame. And unfortunately, many conveyancers now aren't experienced enough to know the full property law. But those few that are there are under a bit of pressure, because any transaction has two people need to work within the law, particularly. I mean, we all do work within the law, but you've got that solicitor working for the buyer and another solicitor working for the seller. And if you've got the most amazing solicitor while you're trying to sell a property, that's absolutely great. But if you have a conveyancer at the other end who doesn't know so much about the law, you don't need much in there until those questions start coming. They lack the understanding. And I mean, Mahesh and Mahesh does it because he's more on the ground these days than I am. Lucky him. But the thing is, no, but sort of him and Jermaine, the thing is, they will recognize more those questions that do come back. And the less experienced the lawyer, the conveyancer, the more questions come. The experienced conveyor doesn't need to ask the questions because they know the answer anyway. Whereas the inexperienced ones will ask those strange questions, but very rarely do they ask the right questions. And if ever it sort of falls through and gets taken to court, as I said, the conveyancer gets told, well, you could have got a search to carry out on that particular property, which would have covered that. But the big challenge is there is a drain. There's a definite drain. There's a drain in certain skills throughout the country, but it's that drain in property lawyers which is making a big difference, and it does extend transaction time.
Mahesh, welcome to the show. So it seems that having first of all, thing to note that it seems to be more and more popular these days that lawyers who were in the past perhaps only focus on conveyancing now have a portfolio of knowledge, which is probably a good thing because it gives them a more 360 view. And the other thing is that much like cycling, it's quite easy to do it okay, but to do it well takes not just knowledge but experience. What say you?
I think most definitely. Good afternoon, everyone. It's like Hamish was saying. Obviously, sort of you've got a plethora of conveyancers out there, especially within the factory sector. It's one of those things where obviously you put too many mice into the pen, you're always going to get a few bad ones anyway. Yeah. But it's one of those things where obviously sort of I know talking to my clients, and they're all conveyancing solicitors, but they're all proper practicing solicitors as well. We spent their time doing their time, and it's always the argument is, and you always get the queries from them. How do we deal with these factory conveyancers who are basically just asking you questions left, right, and center for things which are not even sometimes related to the property? And why do they do it? And the simple answer is the reason why they do it is to stall on time, to give themselves more time. They're getting pressured by their clients to exchange contracts and whatever else. But they're going back to their clients and say, well, we've requested X, Y, and Z questions from the other side solicitors, and we're waiting a response. Now, what they don't tell their client, which is unfair really, is what questions they're asking the other side solicitors.
Right.
If they suddenly said to the other side, to their clients, or we've asked them about a tree preservation, or we've asked them about something which is on the ground, or sort of, for example, a garage space, or something which is possibly maintained, or whatever else. Their client could just tell them, well, okay, there's no trees in the back garden, so you don't have to ask them about a tree preservation order. Right. But they're asking these questions. They don't tell their clients what they're asking, but what they're doing is basically asking extra questions to delay on their transactions, because they're trying to work off a backlog of obviously cases and trying to figure out then what they're doing. So maybe if they've got other queries to answer, which they're not sure of, they then can spend a bit more time on those queries, maybe try and answer them a bit better. And it's just delaying tactics at the end of the day. And
so
I think it frustrates a lot of...
Are they asking these questions because they have a standard sheet of questions, which includes everything,
most definitely,
and of which oftentimes a good percentage of which are completely unnecessary?
Indeed, most definitely. I think I think if you look at, obviously, I suppose the easiest thing for a factory conveyancing firms to do is to put up a checklist of all of these various different questions.
Right.
And then say to their inexperienced conveyancers, right, okay, you've got to basically get an answer for every single one of these. Now, some of the semi-experienced conveyancers probably say, well, okay, we've looked at the property, we know there's no trees there, so I can check that one off. But somebody who's not sure might see something which looks like a bush, something which looks like a tree, or something which could be nearby, and they think, oh, okay, well, we'll answer it just in case anyway. And then you're spending another extra couple of weeks answering silly questions which have no relevance to your property.
Yeah. Do you live in a floodplain? Well, we're on top of a hill.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
All right. But it also appears to me, and I've often noted this, even though they're effectively gathering that information, and then they're doing a push button thing, asking questions, pulling information down, logically, they should be quick. But in most times, I tend to find that IPSA members tend to get back queries much faster than the factory conveyancers. That makes
at the end of the day, sort of, if you set me a query on one of my searches, you get an answer straight immediately because you're dealing with me. You're not dealing with a team of 20 other people from a different firm who've then got to try and find the answers from a stack of reports that they've got, and they don't know who the contact is. If you've got a contact from your agent who's done the actual work himself, you got an answer straight away. If you go to a non-IPSA agent, for example, and you try and go to them and get your answer, you're going to get a call center, and that call center is going to say, yeah, okay, we'll log your call, and then we'll fire off that query to whoever's done it. It might take another week or so for you to get the reply. And then when the reply does come back, you've then got to get that person who's answering those queries to go back into that case to then get your answer. So it might take a couple of weeks before you get your answer. Whereas call me, I'll give you an answer straight away because I know the reports that I've done.
Now, hang on. Is this because of experience? Is this because of better local knowledge? Why would you say this is?
I think it's both, to be fair. I think Hamish will sort of clarify. Obviously, when you're on the ground, when you're doing the reports, you know what you've done. You're not looking at somebody else's case management system or case reports. Even if I've got a team of 5 or 6 other agents, when they send their reports to me, I go through them. I know what's on those reports, and I can answer quite easily within a couple of clicks of a button what your query is. Right. So it's just experience, I think, which tells. So obviously, having been in the industry for 35 years, yes.
Well, exactly. And Hamish, we've often said, have we not, that it's a thing that is developed really over time, is it not?
I think when we look at sort of what happens generally, and this particular aspect comes up too. There are some people who they just think out of the box, and it's very, very easy for them to actually sort of do things, where there are others, they have to have the experience to see outside of the box. I mean, it was quite interesting yesterday because we had on the meeting, and we need to get more awareness out about what Dev Assist do in terms of their reports, because they're working outside the box all the time. They're working out for us what goes on outside of that property, what goes outside of the property boundary. I mean, what Mahesh and I are working at is getting the information together, gathering our information, collating and hopefully gathering other people's information too. So we know what's going on inside the property. But outside of that property is becoming more and more important. But getting back to sort of where we are, the majority of property lawyers don't know that. Now, if the property lawyers don't know it, what chance do, if you like, the conveyancers, and we actually call them factory conveyancers mainly because they have to work with volume. So whether we call them factory or corporate, it doesn't matter. It's volume which drives them. And therefore, very often, they do not know who the client is because it comes into a portal. And basically, it's almost coming into it's a bit like sort of I guess the old casino when you actually see some of these online casinos. I've just seen pictures. I couldn't do it. I press the wrong buttons and all sorts. But you look at it sometimes, and you see this sort of the way somebody's actually sort of pitching the cards out to people. Somebody, the dealer, how the dealer's doing it, and the space and sort of all of that. Now, this is what happens. A lot of searches come in and they go, so different people are doing all sorts of things. Different lawyers are doing stuff. And the person sat on the desk there gets these things from all over the place. They haven't a clue who the client is, by and large. And so they don't have a direct contact with them. Whereas, as Mahesh has just sort of implied, you speak to your lawyers, you speak to those people that you're working with sort of directly. And through that particular experience, you begin to learn more of what's going on. It's almost, I'd like to say intuitive. It's much more of the sort of the female of the species, for one of it, tends to be more intuitive. However, you get to a position in life when you're working these searches that you do get, why isn't there that there? Or why, in fact, Paula, who works, my daughter who works with us, I mean, we call her the anorak because she actually sort of knows so much and where to get all the information from and all sorts of things. And because she reads the situation because she sees one thing, she knows it automatically needs another. Whereas unfortunately, if you're just filling boxes, which many people are, it's a bit difficult. And it comes back to the sort of situation that somebody's trying to arrange another meeting. But now when it gets to a sort of a situation that requires, in fact, sometimes it would be handy if the solicitors could speak to each other, or the solicitor and the conveyancer. But unfortunately, solicitors find it difficult because when they do try and speak to the provider of the search, there's no integration between those and the other solicitor. So it can't actually sort of work. Whereas it's much more intimate, is a good way of putting it, in terms of what you can actually sort of do. But I think probably the most important thing, which makes this whole thing much more effective, is because a property lawyer who has the time, and I think price is a big thing, because it's sort of, some things can't actually sort of work effectively now because of that. The speed at which you have to do it, if you're working at it, as whether it be as we said, whether it be the factory, with it's numbers. You've got this big pile on the desk. You've got to be working through those, and basically that there's a query on that one. Okay, so that one goes to one side. Let's go to the next. That's why the queries take so long, because it's awkward on that particular sort of query, because sometimes you don't even have a chance to look at the query. Now, we don't have that kind of environment. We create an environment which makes it easier for people to actually sort of communicate, because we've got the information there in front of us. But what it is, if you've got all that volume to go through, as Mahesh just sort of said to us earlier, something will take a fortnight that could be done in a matter of hours.
I've always said that the approach that IPSA members seem to take is a John Lewis approach. John Lewis is famous for looking at the whole market and testing the ones, and only putting out the ones they think are the most relevant to their audience. And I think that's kind of the way your approach to searches, isn't it? Is that not, Hamish? Rather than giving everything.
You can look at it, because there is absolutely nothing wrong with Amazon. In fact, Amazon is amazing because it gets so much to you so quickly.
Right.
However, as you pointed out there, Gareth, the best of those are held by John Lewis.
Yes.
So basically, if you yourself want to go and get the best, you would speak to John Lewis about it, or you would look on the John Lewis website. Whereas the other way, you'd actually sort of look on the other side. So I think people having the time as well. I do believe this year we're going to see an awful lot more of it, that it will drive the focus. And even the speakers were saying on Monday that really people are looking for a quality of service now, which wasn't necessarily available previously. And hopefully it will help the conveyancers as well as the property lawyers.
I've noticed a thing in the entire marketplace to do with AI and to do with an overloading of banality and just beige. What I think there's a shift now where people aren't looking for stuff that looks the same as everything else. They want quality and they want focus. So and I think that's pretty much what an IPSA search is about. An IPSA member looks to provide you the right information, not everything, just the right information to help you make better decisions. Hamish, would you care to take us home, please?
Well, unless have you got anything else to add to sort of Mahesh?
No, I was just going to say, obviously, as Gareth mentioned with AI, I mean, AI can give you a hand with certain things, but if you look at trying to do a conveyancing transaction through AI, then you'd stumble probably at the first or second hurdle. It's obviously until you can get it to learn properly, there's no sort of a better understanding than getting a proper conveyancing solicitor who's done their due diligence and checked everything through properly and giving you, and who knows how to do the transaction swiftly.
I mean, one of the very, very important things that we actually sort of realized, and one of the presenters, John Coulter, who himself is the property lawyer who works with AI and everybody should have an AI champion. And one of the things which he said, which AI is sold to people, say, you get this AI and you can cut back on your staff.
Yeah.
That's not a wise move.
No.
You want to keep your experience using AI, who can get the trivia out of the way, so you can focus on the interpretation of what you actually sort of do.
I think use humans what they're best at. Humans are best at interpreting stuff and at seeing the useful information in the gaps between the stuff that's written. And what AI is good is drudgery and mechanical stuff. So use AI to do the mechanical stuff. Use humans to do the creativity.
And of course, that's what makes the world go round too. And Mahesh pointed this particular sort of one. It's not a call center. You want to speak to somebody that's responsible for that particular sort of subject. You don't want to wait 2 or 3 days for them to actually sort of get back to you. You want that answer straight away. You'd love to be able to speak to the person. And I mean, this to me is absolutely sort of great. And the people that I sort of have sort of working with me, if I don't, because I'm the world's worst to get hold of. But it's the team that have the knowledge, to be perfectly honest. They have sort of great knowledge between them. But it's so easy when you've got the numbers right. If you've got an avalanche of stuff going through, and as you said, the fewer solicitors, the fewer conveyancers with knowledge that there are working, the longer everything is going to take.
Yeah.
And if you've got a chain of 5 or 6 people, and only half of those are property lawyers, it can make such a difference to the whole sort of thing. And as Mahesh sort of pointed out, or crikey, we're getting a bit behind on this one. We better actually sort of ask a few questions and slow the whole thing about. It's much of what we speak about, of course. It doesn't happen in every case. But it will happen. And it's recognizing that it will happen that makes the difference.
All right. Well, thank you so much indeed, Hamish. Excellent points made there. And Mahesh, thank you so much for the wealth of your experience and what you bring to the table. And I want to thank all of you for watching and staying with us on this. Remember, we have a number of podcasts every week. We have Tuesday, property matters. We talk about all things specific. We often bring on specialists in various different areas and talk to them about what they're bringing to the table. On Wednesday we have IPSA Kind of Magic, which has been today's podcast. We talk all things IPSA and property search and how that affects the marketplace. On Thursday, of course, we've got Property Quorum, where we get a number of different people and have a bit of a bun fight, and I try and keep order. The whole idea is that we talk about things that hopefully are right in the zeitgeist now that affect all of us. And on Friday, we have arguably our flagship at the moment, which of course is Cladding Matters. We had over 16,000 views on the last one on last Friday, and we get a lot of interest. We've been mentioned in both Australia in Parliament and in Parliament over here, as well as in the House of Lords and at various other institutions, because we're talking about the things that people actually care about. And if any of that strikes a chord, please come along. We'd love to have you here, and please don't hesitate to either comment or reshare or talk to other people about it, because the more people watching, the more impact we can have. Hamish, thank you so much. Mahesh, thank you so much. And to all of you out there, keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and try and look after that mental health. Until next week, goodbye.